In our weekly conversation on land ownership and related matters, we focus our discussion today on individual due diligence steps in land acquisition. The objective of these conversations is to help address the perennial problem of land litigation witnessed in parts of the country, leading to attacks, injuries, and even deaths. In the studio with me is our regular land expert, Ama Yirrah. She's Executive Director for COLANDEF, an NGO focusing on improving land tenure security to help Ghanaians escape poverty. Good to see you, Nanama. And also is in the studio is Ruth Maonyo, who's a Senior Land Administration Officer at the Lands Commission. Good to see you, Ruth. Great. So one of the issues that get people into land litigation is actually their inability to properly secure their lands. How big is this problem? And I'll start with you, Nanama.
It's huge. I mean, it's all over the country. And you can estimate the magnitude of this issue when you remember the fact that in Ghana we have about 80% of our lands in the hands of customary land authorities, the chiefs, the family heads, and so on and so forth. And this 80% of the customary lands, the transactions that occur on it each day go mostly undocumented. And therefore, if you acquire a parcel of land and there is no documentation, especially in the rural areas, then you realize that over time, then the transaction and the agreement that was reached gets, mixed up. And so you get all kinds of issues. Also, when there is no documentation, and especially when people are not actively present on the land, then over a period of time, the transaction changes and you find out that the traditional leader who gave the land gives it to another person, and it creates all kinds of things. So the fundamental problem comes from the fact that this 80% of land is under customary land authorities, and the system for documenting and registering land transaction is in the hands of the state agency. And the connection between them are not that strong, so that one can transit smoothly from the point of acquisition to the point where registration will be done. Is the problem.
But quite unfortunately, it looks like, or there have been concerns raised by people who acquire land about the cumbersome nature and the bureaucratic nature of actually getting a land title. Why is that, Ruth?
Unfortunately, the processes in our office and our procedures have been manual for a very long time. When you buy your land and you bring your document for processing, the checking, everything is done manually. We open manual files, we write manual instructions, the maps on which that they have to make references and pick information is done manually. So unfortunately, for some time, it's been causing some delays. So there has been a system to gradually try to computerize and digitize some of our records and our ledgers to make retrieval of information easier and then faster.
I know the Land Title Act has requirements for how registration of these titles should go. Even the Limitation Act also has some specific requirements for getting all of these done. That shouldn't take us that long.
It shouldn't, but like I said, unfortunately the processes are manual. So when you submit your documents, we have a records office where we are supposed to go and retrieve information. Information on land registration has been kept in jackets and folders, in cabinets and in shelves. So when you bring your documents and we need to retrieve information, yes, the processes and the steps are quite short, but to go through that process, you need to go and pull drawers, pick information, refer to maps, some of which are unfortunately outdated and outmoded, before you can provide information to process the documents that the person has submitted.
And in fact, just to add to that, I would want to say that for us, I think we want to begin to educate the public on some of the things they can do to protect themselves. Because much as we have challenges with the Lands Commission and other related state agencies, we think that when the public is educated on some due diligence steps they take, which can give them a measure of protection, it will help in a large way. So we want to focus the brief period we have to help the public to understand what can I do? If this is the situation at the Lands Commission, what can me as an individual, what can I do to secure my interest?
We'll get to that, and also let me remind our viewers that you can join in the conversation on the WhatsApp number 0540-109009, 0540-109009. The number will be on your screen shortly. Share with us some of the problems you're having with registering your land title, because it's a very huge problem. I've bought land twice. I've had problems. I went to do my checks at the Lands Commission. I was sure that what I was buying was correct, but at the end of the day, it turned out that there were issues with both lands, so I just had to let go. So it's actually a problem, and one of the issues with this has been the middlemen, and you've rightly admitted that you've had to do things manually, and so it takes a longer period, and people who don't have time to waste would have to go through these middlemen who promise them that, oh, I can do it in a day for you, I can do it. How have you, I mean, why have you allowed this to take over your job at the Lands Commission? Because a lot of people don't even come to people like you. They would rather deal with the middlemen.
Well, I wouldn't say we have allowed it anyway, but what
but
I can
has it
say,
come to your notice?
yes,
that
yes. We
are
receive complaints where, like you were saying, clients come and indicate that they came and they had to go through middlemen to get their documents registered, and some have not even been able to complete the processes for them. What I can say is that we agree that there are challenges with our processes. There are delays in the system, but the institution is making efforts to reform. Currently, we have a client service and access unit where we have officers from all the different divisions of the Lands Commission present at that unit. So when you need a certain service in the Lands Commission, you go to that unit. You have officers from the Survey and Mapping Division there. You have officers from the Land Registration Division there. So when you go there and you present your document, whatever inquiry that you need, they are there to provide you with the information and take you to through the process. Currently, when you submit your application there, they take your phone details. So as your process is going along, they send you messages to alert you where the process had gotten to. If there are challenges or we need certain inputs from you, you are invited to come over and provide that information. So what I would say is that, like my colleague here is saying, what we need to tell the public is that try and come to the office. We have offices well labeled. Try and enter any of those offices and ask for officers with ID cards. And we have office lines as well. You submit your document there, take our office lines. If there are any issues, call, and then we can explain to you instead of going through this middleman.
This middleman.
Yes.
And Nana, I think you
Yes.
want have a response
before
to that.
your document even gets to the Lands Commission, the transaction would have already taken place. The transaction is executed between you and the landowner. So at that stage, there are certain things you can do to protect the interest you are acquiring in the land.
Okay.
Because by the time you get to the Lands Commission, whatever would have happened between you and the landowner, which would affect your interest on the land, has already happened.
Yeah.
So what we think is important is that the Lands Commission and its allied agencies would want to focus not only on the receiving of documents for registration, but also on establishing that close connection with the with the customary land authorities, so that the transactions that occur are handled in a way that protects the interest of the people who are acquiring, so that by the time it gets to the point of registration, we can be certain that all the foundational issues would have been sorted out, and so the registration done will be registration that will really go into effect to protect and need to actually enhance the security. The reason I'm saying this, and which is of critical concern to us at COLANDEF, is that, you know, we do a lot of public education, and through that, a lot of issues come up. Some of the issues are issues which, if people were aware, if people were educated, they were informed, they wouldn't make some of those mistakes. For example, in Ghana, we have different types of land. I'm sure you didn't even know.
Yeah.
But there are different types of land. There are stool lands, there are family lands, there are skin lands, there are clan lands.
Yeah.
And within each of these land systems, there are different customary land authorities. So if you know there are different types of lands, if you are going to acquire land, you would not think that, oh, the land is just the land. No, you would want to understand what type of land am I entering into. Is it a family land area? Is it a stool land area? If it is a family land area, who is the customary land authority, the custodian, yes, that I have to interact with? Yeah. It is a family head. And the family head with the elders of that family will sit with you and transact the land. Yeah. But in many cases, you find out that people don't have any idea whether the land is a stool land area, it's a family land area, or it's a skin or clan land area. Yeah. And that is where the confusion begins. So you have cases where some individuals have acquired parcels of land within a stool land area, and they have transacted with some families who are a subset of the stool. Yeah. And that becomes problematic. Beyond knowing the type of land you are acquiring, it's important to also understand the institutional makeup of the traditional authority. Yeah. It's the family head, okay, but who constitutes the leadership? Yeah. In many cases, people transact with the individual family head. Which is not right. Which is not right. And again, that is the problem. So people need to understand, know the type of land, know the institutional arrangement for that area. If it's a family, know that is the family head plus the elders. If it is the stool, know that is the paramountcy with the elders. If it's a division, because in some cases, the paramountcy delegates authority to the divisional heads to transact. Yeah. You need to know. Okay. How will you know? Just ask. Because the Lands Commission doesn't have that information. They are not in charge of the customary lands.
And so I'm not sure they have a section
or
a department that would educate you on all of this.
Well, the Lands Commission is supposed to do that,
we
actually.
We don't have a department, but there are officers who have information. So like I said, when you get to the Client Service and Access Unit, we have officers there who are from the Public and Vested Lands Management Division. Okay. That is the division that does some processes on stool lands. So when you get there and you speak to some of those officers, they have this knowledge. They can tell you areas that are family or stool or skin or clan. And like she's saying, the lands belong to the traditional owners. If they don't bring their documentation to our office to record, there will be we wouldn't have that information
there. But I think she specifically mentioned some of the categories of lands that we have and the people you need to deal with. We've got stool lands, we've got family lands, we've got customary
and we have public lands.
So in some cases you are looking at allodial titles. In other cases you're looking at something else. So who advises the buyer on which one or which way to go in the event that you are choosing family property, for instance, or you don't have that division at the Lands Commission?
Well, like she's saying, before the person even comes to the Lands Commission, the person has already identified the land that they are interested in buying. So what you can do is that within the area that you've located the land, inquire, because I'm sure when you get there, you would have seen signs that there are people, other people who have acquired land from there. So you can inquire from them who they bought it from. The person you have seen that you want to buy from, ask questions. Who are they? Are they a family? Is it the family head? Is it from a chief, from a stool, that is a chief or elder? Is it from a clan or a skin? When you have that basic information, then you can come to the Lands Commission and make an inquiry. See, when you come to the Client Service Unit, you can make an inquiry. I've seen this land in, say, Nungwa that I'm interested in buying. What is the land holding system in Nungwa? We have knowledge in the office that Nungwa is a stool land area. So when you come, we can advise you that Nungwa is a stool land area. If you want to acquire land, the document must be signed by the chief. Fortunately, when a chief is installed in a certain area, the Regional House of Chiefs, when they gazette, they write to the Lands Commission to inform us.
So you know that,
yes,
which lands?
Yes, some of the heads, yes, even some of the families. the right to inform us that they are a family, they own these lands within this area, and every document that comes to our office must be signed by this family head with these other signatories as witnesses. So when you come and you make that inquiry, we have some of this information that we can give you. Some are not documented, but it's institutional knowledge, and we have officers there who know. So when you come and make the inquiry, we give you the information.
Well, that's quite interesting. But one other problem we've had with this land issue has been the fact that sometimes we're told that if it is a stool land, make sure you buy it from the chief, or you make sure the custodian of the stool is the one who signs it. If it is a family land, you need to make sure the head of the family and some principal members of the family are the ones who witness the buying and the signing, or if and the other ones. And then sometimes they tell you that, well, all these ones are not good. You rather buy from the estate developers because they have acquired the lands from these traditional people and they've done all their papers. But whichever way you look at it, there seem to be problems with the lands. I mean, why do we have to go through this?
In fact, we don't have to. We don't have to. And that is why we say that it's important for people to get educated so that they take some individual responsibility for securing their interest in the land. Regarding some of these estate companies, what we have found in our work around the country is that many of the estate companies acquire the land, get a leasehold for a number of years, and the leasehold covers a large area, say 50 acres, 100 acres, and then they parcel it out to some individual customers. The point is, when they have acquired a leasehold for say 50 years and they have a marketing plan to parcel it out and sell it out to people, as the days go by, the 50 years is really reducing. So if you had 50 years today, the next year you no longer have 50 years, and so on. Yet, because they transacted with 50 years, when they are parceling out, they still write in the agreement 50 years. That is one problem. And the customers don't read. So they receive the indenture and it is signed. And so for them, that is it. So in some cases, it is not even a lease or an assignment or a sublease that is granted. It's only an allocation. Especially those places where they construct the building and people acquire the building. They buy the house, so to say. They don't really give them any interest in the land. They give them an allocation note for the house they have bought. That becomes very difficult to understand what interest you have bought, because the land is what gives the value. The building on it is only as good as the interest you have in the land. So if you are given an allocation note, it makes your interest in the land very confusing. And therefore, for many of these estate companies and individuals who have acquired houses within the estates, it's difficult to define what type of interest they have in the land, and it makes it very challenging and very unsecure.
This is certainly a conversation that must continue, and that's why we're having weekly conversations on lands, because land issues are not issues we can deal with in a day. So we'll continue this conversation, but we're running out of time. I'd like to take a few of your comments on WhatsApp, and Jalil from Tamale says, it's sad and regrettable how public servants render customer service to taxpayers. It's clear they are public master, not public servants. In fact, it took me 2 years to fully register my land documents. It again took 4 months just to secure prepaid meter. Okay, so he's talking about something else now. Now, let's see this one. He says, please, how much will it cost? Okay, please send your message again. I can't quite read your message. This one says, I shall ask them for me. I have shown a building land and I've paid it. I have sand on it, but I don't have anything from the landowner yet, though I have severally required that. What would I do thereof? One, a stool land, and another, an individual. So if you know it's a stool land, it means that you are doing the wrong thing by dealing with an individual, because that may land you into trouble. And quite a number of your messages too here. Let me check out this. is coming from Akwesi from Adenta. He says, please, I have a land at Ashalaja, at Amasaman, trying to register, and it has taken years. Please, can I start the building because the people are telling me if I don't start anything on it, they will take it?
Well, starting a building is also a different process. You need a building permit from the planning authority within the assembly, and there are requirements that he has to follow with that in that regard. So he might have to approach the planning authority in that assembly and find out. But I would encourage him to pursue the registration. Come to the office and come and seek explanation. Sometimes we communicate information to clients and they don't receive it. Sometimes because there are people in between. Sometimes because the postal system takes time for them to receive the information. So what I would say is that he should try and come to the office and try and look for an officer and find out what is stalling his process, and then we can.
Briefly, we're running out of time, but I'd like to find out from you, Nanama, what's the most important thing to do if you've bought the land, you've purchased the land, and the papers are delaying, or do you have to actually get your papers and everything before even you do exchange of any money or something?
Yes, you need to, because that documentation is what guarantees your interest in the land.
Not putting up a building on the land.
No, the documents which is duly executed is what guarantees your interest in the land. It's just like going to purchase an item and not collecting a receipt. You see, the shop owner says, go and come back later for the receipt.
And later,
would you do that?
If the shop owner says you stole the product, I mean, you have nothing to show that you paid for it.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't. So we want to say that people should be mindful that documentation of the transaction is critical.
I hope that we would explore this next week, because you're talking about documentation. In some cases, the people acquire documentation and it turns out to be the documents are fake. In other cases, you find two people holding same documents for same land, and that is also another problem. And I think we'll explore this next week when we get to this conversation. That will be it for that. And I thank you. Nana Ama Yirrah is Executive Director for COLANDEF, and Ruth Maunyo is Senior Lands Administration Officer from the Lands Commission.